Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday. Number 301, going back to all the way back to January of 2013. I'm your host today, Kelly Bearden with the CSUB Small Business Development Center, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We got a great program as usual. Going a little different here with a lot of resources and a lot of great information for you for your nonprofits. Nonprofits serve a valuable part of our community, and we're happy to provide this to you today. And today is Wednesday, December the 6th, 2023, and we're going to be getting into the details for strategic planning, strategic direction for nonprofits. And really, so many nonprofits operating in our communities and offer so much. And, the way I see it, as our SBDC program provides services to our entire community, focusing on our small businesses, but nonprofits play such a vital role. Happy to do this today. And we'll even spin off into the local nonprofit success areas and some of the local spin on nonprofits. We have been mentioning the last week or two, coming in 2024 is a very significant filing that those that have LLCs, corporations, and even possibly nonprofit corporations. And that is a filing that is going to be required for owners, and that's through the Corporate Transparency Act. We'll add a little bit more of that and really kind of focus you toward, if you are an LLC or corporation, you're going to be doing this filing in the first quarter of 2024. There's going to be 32.6 million entities that are filing into this database. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but really, I really want to focus you until probably early January, to where we have really leading expert that I've been able to find on the Corporate Transparency Act come on and give you the complete details, because it is rather significant and important. Our capital quarter is going to celebrate a little bit. We're going to celebrate our regular feature capital quarter, the financial data that we have actually been able to, we will be accessing soon, a little bit of information on that. Our resident economist, Dr. Mark Evans, will be returning next week on Economic Corner. So look in for him. He's really been up about this federal budget and how it is affecting a lot of the economic data and a lot of the economic concerns, and how that relates down to small business. So I anticipate him to touch on that next week. Quick disaster updates today, resources, business tools. As always, we'll take your questions. Your questions will be answered live at the conclusion of the webinar, so please go into the Q&A box and put a question if you have one. Our resources, today's resources, will be in our chat box, and you're starting to see that populated already. And our chat box, run by our webinar producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, doing a fantastic job as always. And there will be chat and resources in there, and a very brief poll for you today. So let me pull up our one little poll question that we have. Not too difficult, not too detailed, kind of just an easy, relevant question for today. And that is, what is your nonprofit's biggest concern at this time? What are you losing sleep over? Is it funding? Is it strategic direction? Is it engagement with the community? Is it help with personnel, with volunteers and other assistance needed to help run your nonprofit? Or if you have any others, please go into the chat box and add those, and we'll fish those out at the earliest convenience. So again, a very simple, very basic poll question today. I'm not getting fancy, I'm not getting whimsical, but what is your biggest concern as a nonprofit? Is it going to be funding, strategic direction, engagement with your communities? Is it working with your personnel, your staffing, your volunteers, and others? Or if you have anything else, hit it in the chat box and we'll funnel that out. Okay, good participation. We're up to 75% of you for participating. 75% participating. Thank you so much. We're going to give you a last moment to actually jump in at the very last end. And we're going to go ahead and close the poll with 80% participation. I love an 80% participation. And 56 having multiple responses available towards you. I kind of failed to mention that, but you could actually put in multiple answers on this one. But still funding, 56%, biggest issue. Second would be the strategy, the strategic planning, the direction needed for your nonprofit to serve its mission, 50%. Engagement with the community, 13%, and only 6% had staffing, volunteer, or other assistance in that area. And we have some in the chat box that we'll check in just a second. Okay, so we will stop checking that and just jump to the chat real quick and see what we had in there. And I don't see it. So we do have others, but others that we're not going to discuss apparently. Okay, so we mentioned a little bit earlier about the Corporate Transparency Act. And again, this is going to be big for anybody that has an interest in a corporation or LLC to see how this law affects you. The Corporate Transparency Act was enacted to get kind of information, personal information from the officers, directors, and owners of entities that have to file like with Secretary of States and other legal entities. So it's going to be pretty much driven by those that own shares of their corporation or limited liabilities and other entities. It's designed to curb illegal activities such as money laundering, tax fraud, trafficking, and other serious crimes that really right now, because of some of the filings in many states where you don't have to disclose private information, that it's really kind of incumbent on a lot more sleuthing and detailed work. And they even throw in some of the activities going on in Russia and in Ukraine in those activities. So their broad reach will affect many companies and individuals, and it's going to go far beyond, of course, the illegal activity that they're trying to root out. So it is going to require you that you enter your personal information into a federal database. You know, everything about privacy these days, you know, but you're going to be required to put personal information. That personal information is going to be the ownership percentage in that particular entity. You're also going to have personal information that's going to require your full legal name, your date of birth, your address, your government-issued unique ID number, whether it be a passport or a driver's license. So that is going to go into a database. Now, what that database will do is it's a database that's going to be called, let me see if I can remember the name of it. It's going to be a database that actually is designed to curb illegal activities. So it is called FinCEN. There it is right there, the database FinCEN, which is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. And that will be shared. It's non-public, but it can be shared with other organizations and other governments, for that matter, that are looking to address the issues that were mentioned before as far as trafficking, terrorism, and so forth. So before, what we'd do is we would just file our entity with the state government. In California, it'd be the Secretary of State's office. But now you have to file this beneficial ownership report within 90 days. It was 30 days and was recently changed. And the other thing is, so many things are changing within this regulation. The database isn't up yet. The form that you are going to have to file is a beneficial ownership report, and then provide in the database is not completed out. So there's a lot of things that are going to be changing and moving along. So this will be something that we talk about on a weekly basis and really focus heavily after the first of the year. So that is kind of what's going on. And so how will this affect your nonprofits? I mean, we're talking nonprofits today. How will that affect? Well, you know, your 501c3s and your other 501c7s, 9s, whatevers, are generally not going to have to file. So there are, though, exceptions. And some of the exceptions are going to be if you have a for-profit subsidiary. So maybe you have a nonprofit entity, and maybe you operate for revenue purposes to fulfill the mission of that nonprofit. For example, a thrift store. Thrift stores are common nonprofit, for-profit subsidiaries of nonprofit, or any other type. Each of those for-profit subsidiaries are going to have to file based on, and again, it's going to be the personal information of the officers and directors or those that own interest in that particular entity. So what that will also do, though, is it will engage the nonprofit to need to file as well. So if you have a for-profit subsidiary that will require a CTA filing, the nonprofit as a whole will also have to, whereas generally nonprofits, if they don't have any for-profit subsidiaries or any other reasons that come up relatively soon, will need to do. But keep this on your radar. It's got huge penalties. The penalties for not filing are $500 per day. And last time I did math, that's about $15,000 a month. And the way that they are going to root out the outliers and bad actors in this is going to be by those oftentimes that aren't going to be doing the filing, not going to be providing accurate or their personal information. And so it's anticipated that they're going to go rather heavily after about everybody who doesn't do this filing. So a lot on the radar on this that's going to be coming down. It's going to take, you have 90 days before so basically we're looking at a March 31st, 2024 deadline for this particular issue. You know, on our capital focus that we do on about every webinar, we have been talking the last, probably last 6-8 weeks about the small business credit survey that is done annually by the Federal Reserve Banks. And the Federal Reserve Banks do a nice job of gathering surveys across the country to try to determine what the needs are for small businesses in accessing capital. So we did have an opportunity when we had the Federal Reserve on a webinar to actually participate with them and to share the link to the survey with those in our audience, and really thrilled about our audience and the work that our webinar producer Maureen has done. And I believe they said if we had 75 completed surveys, they would actually detail information for Kern County and get us that information. And I am happy to report that we have over 100 applications in, or 100 surveys that have been completed. We don't have the exact number, but I think it's time to push out our chest and expose those biceps and give a big shout out and a big thanks to all of our small businesses that participated. This data is going to be incredibly resourceful in helping us as we move on down the road in trying to find access to capital and programs as we continue to move on. So thank you all so much. And with that, it's time to bring in our first guest today. And our first guest today is Aaron Falk, the president and CEO of the Kern Community Foundation. Aaron grew up here in Bakersfield, graduated from Stockdale High School. He has his MBA from CSUB, and I didn't ask him if I could share this story, but you know, I'm an introducer on the fly, so here I go. Aaron told me he was going to apply for his degree at CSUB, and I told him that he needed 2 letters of support in order to do that, and I'd be happy. First time ever, I offered to write him a letter of support for the MBA program, and he promptly notified me that thank you, but he already had his 2 letters, and when I inquired from who, it would be the future Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and U.S. Senator, I believe, Christine Sinzema from Arizona. Or I could be wrong on that, but Senator McSally, that's it. But so thank you for fact-checking me, and that's why I don't usually do that. I'll go too far off. But he served with the congressional as a staffer in DC for 7 years, and then with Representative Kevin McCarthy before moving on to the Kern Community Foundation. Aaron, it's great to have you here with us today in studio. So come on in here and take it away.
Thank you, Kelly. It's really cool to join you here in person. I got introduced to your webinar when I was working for Kevin McCarthy during COVID. And we were trying to make sense of what was going on from the government as far as assisting our small businesses. And things were really in a hurry. And I found that I was actually getting better and cleaner information from your webinar than I was getting from our people in DC. So thank you. Going back to then, you helped us sound really smart. You and the SBA, Don Golick as well.
Wow, thank you.
if any of my friends are out there watching today from Team McCarthy, obviously there was big news this morning. Kevin was a fantastic boss. He's a great human being, and I wish him the best going forward. I hope he finds something in Kern County, because I know that he is 100% committed to what goes on here. And I'll get off the political soapbox. So Aaron Falk, President and CEO of the Kern Community Foundation. Thank you for the intro, Kelly. The Kern Foundation, our mission is growing community and growing philanthropy. And what that means is that since 1999, we have been working to connect our donors with the nonprofits and the students in Kern County that could benefit the most from their help. And we've built out a nice little program around that. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what we do and when we might be useful to your businesses or nonprofits. So at the end of the day, our biggest activity is fund management. We're the home to almost 200 different funds. Most of these are donor-advised funds. Now, a donor-advised fund is something that a person, an organization, or a business might open. Maybe they would want to normally have their own foundation. Think the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or the CSUB Foundation, but they don't want to have a lawyer and an accountant, and they don't want to hire a staff. They just want to make sure that the money that they're able to donate is having maximum impact. And so you can go through the Kern Community Foundation, and we can host your fund. You get to name your fund. Your fund lives forever, and we can grow those through an endowment. And then you can put the money into your fund as you go. It will continue to grow, and you can grant out the earnings from the investments without ever touching that principal. And we have a lot of funds that started out as $1,000 or $10,000 and are now up to $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. We have several that are in the millions now. And I'll give an example in a little bit, but when you get to $1 million, you've got $50,000, $100,000 a year that you can grant out without touching your principal on a decent year. And they're able to use that to really make an impact on what they want to improve in Kern County. We also have other types of funds, field of interest funds, designated funds, or an agency fund, which is when a nonprofit has us host their endowment. Usually there's a big project that they're working on, maybe a capital improvement project or buying a building, or they want to set up an endowment that's going to pay for their operations. And so we can host that fund for them. We take care of all of the back end management of the taxes and the donations and the receipts and all of that. And then you can just focus on your mission for your organization. We also manage a lot of one-time payment for long-term projects. We'll be a fiscal agent or a fiscal sponsor for things. When we did the 2020 census, a one-time or two-time payment would come in to run it, and it would have to go for 7 or 8 months. And it's common to use a community foundation as a center of gravity for that. The same during the pandemic, as we were trying to figure out vaccine clinics and distributing personal protective equipment and things like that. It's very common to use a community foundation because we've got the expertise. We're connected with the local nonprofits, local healthcare providers, and even local business owners to make sure that the aid is getting to the people who need it the most. And on that note, we also frequently are a center of gravity when there's a natural disaster. We get an earthquake, a fire, something like that. You'll get a disaster declaration, a one-time check comes in, but that's got to handle recovery for months, if not years. And so it's very common for us to host a fund through that that can then go on and be ready whenever there is another fire or another earthquake. We still have the ability to respond to it while we're waiting for the federal government or the state government to declare an emergency and to bring in new funding. Now, through that, we get to do a lot of local grant making. The grant making is really the fun part of what we do. Some of it we do within our foundation. So, for example, we're the home of the Women and Girls Fund. And what that fund does is provide enrichment and education opportunities for women and girls all across Kern County. It started in 2006 when a group of women got together and everybody gave a little bit to start a fund. And I think it started right around 100,000, and it's now up well over $2 million. They're able to grant out 80,000, 100,000 a year to different local nonprofits who are making a difference for women and girls in Kern County. It's a wonderful thing. It's one of my favorite events of the year when we do the luncheon. We get to announce the grant winners, and then we get to follow up and help tell the story of the grant winners and how they are using that money and their organizational skill to improve, again, outcomes for women and girls in Kern County. We are also able to work with partners. Sometimes these partners are official partners, like a nonprofit that has an agency fund with us. And sometimes it's a business or the government who has a one-time project that they're trying to do. For example, we recently helped California Highway Patrol with a big fundraising golf tournament. And we took the money from that and donated it to local organizations that support first responders. So second year we've done that now. It's been a lot of fun. We'll also work with, there's a local energy company. Am I allowed to plug private companies?
Go ahead.
Era Energy has been a wonderful partner. And we help them with all sorts of different corporate social responsibility that they want to do. Sometimes it is granting money out to classrooms in underserved areas, or sponsoring a baseball diamond for kids to use, things like that. And so we get to help them do that and help them tell the story about what they're doing. And then lastly, I'm the home to almost 40 different scholarships. It's very common, and especially in Kern County, for somebody who has a lot of money and wants to make a positive impact to fund scholarships. So we get to run these 40 different scholarship programs that are available to any student in Kern County to apply for. One application goes to all of the scholarships, and I've got a tremendous staff who is going to go through, sort all those, and then we work with the community to identify the best applicants through there to win these scholarships. Now, to do all of that, we do charge a community fee. We're pretty cheap compared to what other organizations who do this charge, usually between 1% and 2% annually on whatever's in the fund. Through that, we have to pay for our regular business activities, right? So I've got to have a staff, and they've got to be good, because we can't get this stuff wrong. I've got the same overhead most of you have, where we've got a small office, we've got computers, we've got phones, I've got to pay my insurance, all of that fun stuff. And it's important that we have a professional operation with modern technology. I don't have the really cool recording studio that you can't see here for the Small Business Development Center, maybe someday. But we do have modern computers and servers and all of that capability. And then we also invest heavily in various software licensing and associations. And these are things that I feel give the Kern Community Foundation a competitive advantage over other types of organizations that do the same sort of work. We've got the largest grant database that exists, that we pay a lot of money to have access to. We're members in all sorts of associations where we share best practices with other community foundations and philanthropists in general. And these are all things that we do to provide better service to our donors and to our nonprofits. So in order to best serve our donors, when that money comes in, we need to know that where we're sending that money out to is in a position to maximize the impact that those donors want to have. And so we spend a lot of our time on nonprofit strengthening initiatives. I think we saw from the poll earlier that the number one thing, and I can back this up, the number one thing that I hear is we need more money. Across the board, everybody is always trying to raise more money. Our flagpole event is Give Big Kern, which hopefully you've heard of. It's the first Tuesday in May. So I'm going to plug that now. And then we're also having a big meet and greet at the park at Riverwalk on Saturday, April 20th. Please join us there. Since 2016, Give Big Kern has raised millions of dollars from thousands of donors for hundreds of local nonprofits. It's a great way to get involved. If you have a nonprofit and you haven't been involved, go to our website, www.kernfoundation.org, and check it out. It's 100% free to participate, and we'll help you figure out what your plan is for fundraising and growing that over time through Give Big Kern. We also host the Kern Alliance of Nonprofits. What we do through the Kern Alliance, or CAN, is we help make sure that the nonprofits in town have the tools that they need to properly run their organization. Things from strategic management to bookkeeping to advertising and marketing. We work both with the nonprofits on the things that they feel like they need help on, and also with the grantors and the donors on the things that they want to see, because some of the reporting requirements for nonprofits can be a little bit dense, and we want to make sure that everybody in Kern County who gets a substantial grant is set up to succeed and then hopefully win more grants. Thanks to our community fees, I'm also able to meet with pretty much anybody for free and talk to you about the mechanics of setting up a nonprofit, how to get plugged in Kern County, some networking opportunities, and things like that. And then if you are a nonprofit, we will help you, even if you're not registered with us formally, we'll still help you. Through that, we can also help with people once they get a grant on how you maximize what you're doing with the money to make sure that you are really getting at the basis of what that grant is for. It can be tempting to spend some of the grant money on this, that, or the other that maybe isn't perfectly dialed in with what the grant is intended for, and that can get you in trouble. And so if you need help actually executing your grant, we're happy to help with that. And then lastly, we will help you with telling everybody all of the great things that you did with this grant. As we move into this era of social media and different ways to communicate and different audiences that you can reach through different channels and with different language and different technology, you want to make sure that you're hitting the right market that you want to hit and that you're reaching them with a medium and a language that they understand. And so we've devoted a lot of time to that over the last year and a half, and we're getting a lot better at it, and we're able to help our friends get better at it too. So that's the quick and dirty on how the Kern Community Foundation works.
Well, fantastic stuff. Thanks for everything you do for the community. How can people contact you? What's the best way?
You can go to our website, www.kernfoundation.org. You can find us on all of your social media platforms at Kern Foundation, or you can call us 661-325-5346.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Kelly.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, so our official winter storm disaster picture tells us that soon expiring our SBA disaster loan grants. These are for both nonprofits and for-profits. You'll notice the interest rate is cheaper on nonprofits. But there are two of them that are expiring very soon in early January, and that's the 2022 Fork Fire around the Bass Lake area. I believe that's Fresno County, but it extends to the entire region. Also the 2023 winter storms, the widespread damage, and the new one on the salmon fishing just came out this week. So we'll be talking about that later. But the key thing to remember on those is that this line right in the middle is what the loans are still available, and that's economic injury. It's not that you've had any physical disaster. It's that your business has been impacted and has had disastrous results in the short term because of implications you could not control out of that disaster. It could have been your main customer had issues and you couldn't sell to them. Your main supplier couldn't provide you materials to build your product. It could be a vendor issue. It could be anything along those particular lines. A road was washed out, etc. But if your business has been impacted, looking at very low interest rates of 3.3 in this day and time, and also 2 3/8% for nonprofits. I want to remind you that the period is still open for the Small Business Digital Ready program. That's $10,000 grant. You need to apply before December 20th. This is only for Mono County businesses. And step one is to register your business with Small Business Digital Ready. And then there's some other steps in order to apply. Want to run a home daycare? We're working still with Nurture throughout our Central California region. You can call to learn more, 916-919-1353. $1,000 grants, a 12-week course starts soon. We have such a critical need for childcare providers, not only in Kern County, but throughout the 13-county region. It's a great opportunity for those to learn how to run a home childcare business. A home daycare business can provide you with the needs to run that particular business and actually do it very effectively and profitably, I might add. A lot of tools for our toolbox. One of the tools that we'll be introducing in the next week or two, probably, so stay tuned. We'll get into that. But really, our YouTube channel, we're up to 379 subscribers. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll find the latest Webinar Wednesday video there. We're noticing a great deal of uptick in that particular individuals going to the particular website and or actually YouTube page and getting the particular information. One of those you'll find there is about the economic injury disaster loan and a webinar that was done with Don Golick and with Rich Mostert from our Valley Community SBDC back in June, but gives you great information on the actual program, the agreement, the loan agreements that you go through and other aspects of that particular deal, which brings us to another big deal, our special guest today. And our special guest is Eric Ryan. He's the founding partner of Mission Med, a national leader in the field of strategic planning for nonprofits, passionate about the power that practical and effective strategic planning can have on a nonprofit's capacity. You see the books that he has written. In addition to his consulting work, he started a nonprofit, served as an executive director. And having worked with Eric over the last 11 years, I can tell you, I was not a powerhouse in strategic planning. I might not still be a powerhouse, but I am a true believer in how it can really transcend your organization, and the strategic planning guidance that he provides and the tools and the resources are incredible. He is a graduate of UC Berkeley, lives in the Bay Area. He's got a wonderful wife and two hilarious children, likes to camp and hike in one place I know is close to our picture we had earlier, Central Sierra, high country of Yosemite. Eric, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Kelly, you're a good friend, known each other for a long time. Thank you for having me here. It was really great listening to Aaron and what Aaron had to share. So thank you, Aaron, for all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay, Maureen. Let me go ahead and do this.
Yes, go ahead, please.
All right, sounds good. We heard from Maureen. Hey, Maureen.
Hey, Eric.
So we have a brief time here. We have even an hour is a kind of a brief time if we had a full hour of doing this. So what I'm going to do my best to do is share some absolutely essential components of what you can do to overcome some of the common barriers to creating and executing your nonprofit's plan. So this is specifically focused on small and medium-sized nonprofits. I believe it was Susan earlier put a comment in the chat that shared that she was considering starting a nonprofit. So some of this will, for the small. So I'm used to working with, when I say small and medium, they could be startup nonprofits to 10, 20 million. So we aren't talking about the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts or the International Red Cross. We're talking about smaller organizations. How can you do this effectively? And why in the heck would you want to do this even? I'm just going to start with that before I get into the slides. Aaron referenced earlier that probably the number one pain point that the nonprofits that he is aware of is funding. And what I've found over the years is those organizations that have a simple, practical strategic planning process in place are significantly better prepared to raise, acquire sustainable funding from their funders, their members, whomever they're serving, and the donors. We did some research actually at my company, Mission Med. We did some research and we found that those organizations that had a plan and were using it were able to effectively, this was self-reported from those organizations we interviewed, which were from 6 continents actually, 40% better at raising funds. So imagine what sort of impact having a strategic plan just financially can have on your organization. I've committed my life professionally to this process. I've been doing this work since the late 90s. I've been executive director, board chair. And I feel like if you and your team can have a simple, practical, useful, ongoing planning, creating and use of a strategic plan process in place, it can really transform and your organization. I've seen it happen over and over and again. I've seen it happen with Kelly and his SBDC colleagues around the state when we've done the strategic planning work with them. It's really transformative. So I believe in this passionately. It's referenced in my bio. For the leaders to do this work really well, this can really be super transformative. You can certainly contact me there at my email. You're going to get access to these, all of these slides you're going to get access to. So I'm just going to kind of go through these rather quickly, some of these first ones. So I run a business that I've been doing this work since the late 90s. Mission Met was formed in 2018. That's the latest iteration of the work that we've been doing, but we do serve organizations and associations around the country and Australia. And truly our mission is stated there on the slide that we're trying to make strategic planning easier and more effective for mission-driven leaders. I'm going to be presenting a set of slides. Hopefully you walk out of here with some core ideas that you can really utilize to make your strategic planning more effective and you're going to get access to a bunch of resources by the end of this. I really believe this is a gift for you. If you can take some of these core ideas, we didn't just create this presentation for this webinar, as much as I love Kelly and want to help him out with the webinar Wednesday and Maureen. These core ideas are things we've been perfecting for over 20 years, really. And so they're powerful, simple ideas. They're not rocket science, but the discipline of using them is really critical. And I want you to listen to some of these ideas with the intention of what can you really do? So with some of these, is there one thing you can do at the end of this that will help you in your strategic planning efforts? Often we go to these webinars and we kind of just forget about it. We go to the next meeting. But really think about, is there something here that you can use, you can talk about with your team, you can follow up with me or follow up with some of the resources and actually use. So getting into the content of this, strategic plans come in like dogs. A Chihuahua is a dog, a Great Dane's a dog. Like, they're both dogs. Strategic plans could be 100 pages for the city of Bakersfield, and it could be 1 page for a small organization. They're both strategic plans. What they share in common, ideally, is people make this stuff a lot more complicated than it really is. A strategic plan simply presents a vision for a future for your organization and some of the impact that you want to have and some steps to get there. That's all it is. Where do you see and the common way we think of it is, where do you see your organization in 3 years? For smaller organizations, that's a nice time frame. Doesn't have to be 3, but something like that in 3 years. And what are you going to do this year to take you in that direction? And the more important question, however, is highlighted here towards the bottom of the slide. It's easy to say what's a strategic plan, and we're so focused on a plan. What's more important question, frankly, is what's a strategic planning process, and what's the right size and fit for a process for you? And what does that really mean? Like, how do you and your team create a plan? How do you measure it? How do you track it? How do you revise it? Our particular approach in Mission Med is an annual cycle. But there's different ways of doing it. But answering that question is a lot more valuable than the question at the top of the slide, which is what's a plan and how do you do it? If you and your team, and this gets to some of the barriers and so on that I'll reference in a moment. If you and your team can create a planning process, a component of which is a plan, then you're setting yourself up for success. If you just approach this as thinking, hey, we're going to create a plan, you're sort of dead in the water, because that plan is going to end up collecting dust and go by the wayside. So in any event, a plan, the way that we think of it, it does present a future direction or vision with some steps to get there, but more importantly, really clarifying for your organization what the process is that you all in your team going to use to not only create but really implement. And that's why I've known Kelly for 11 years, is we've been working on the planning process for his center and the centers, the small business development centers in the region that he and his colleagues. So that's this concept of an ongoing process is central to what I found to be most important. On the screen here is sort of like the central slide in this slide deck. The way that this content's set up is you have on the left-hand side a set of what are not all of the barriers. There's probably 79,000 barriers to making this stuff work right. But what are some of the core common barriers that I want to share with you? And then the solutions on the right-hand column. And the slides that follow will kind of walk you through these barriers and solutions. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump into barrier number 1, event-based mindset. The reason why this is barrier number 1 is that you and your team, Aaron probably sees this maybe at his own foundation, other organizations that he works with, that people approach strategic planning. Hey, they want to create an event. They may even approach his foundation with trying to get resources to create a strategic plan. And that's not a bad thing. The problem with this is that if you only think of strategic planning as event, we're going to get together and have a retreat, we're going to do a SWOT analysis, we're going to, whatever, then you're kind of dead in the water from the very beginning, because you're not thinking of it as an ongoing, never-ending process. Now, on the slide here, you'll see a visual of our particular 4-step process that we use. It's not the only process. The point of this cycle, of this graphic, is it's an ongoing cycle. Our particular cycle is called the CAPE cycle: champion, assess, plan, and execute. I'm not going to get into the details of what all that really means. The point here is that you and your team think, okay, we're going to create a plan. we're going to execute it. We're going to have the right leaders that are leading it. We're going to do some regular type of assessment, and it's going to be ongoing. And if you and your team from the very beginning reiterate with each other that we're not just creating a plan, but we're going to measure it, we're going to track it, we're going to honor it, we're going to have people responsible for it, we're going to communicate it, we're going to revise it. That whole mindset is going to help you overcome this event-based mindset. This is if you don't have this mindset to begin with, you're just going to not nearly get as much value out of the process, and really leave a lot on the table in terms of the return on your time and money. Strategic planning often gets a bad rap because people say, we spend all this time and money creating a plan, the event-based mindset, and then it just goes and collects dust, the plan that we created. So from the very beginning, making sure that you have a process-based mindset, some sort of cycle that you all are putting in place. And there's a lot of flavors to that, but that's the core concept is the same. And you can see at the bottom of that slide that in my book, which you'll get access to the PDF version of it. It's also available on Amazon, but you'll get a free copy of the PDF from this that Maureen and Kelly will share with you, that link. But introduction in chapter 2 there references this idea. Barrier number 2. As leaders of a small or medium-sized nonprofit, you've got a ton on your plate. You don't have, a staff member, a set of administrators that can follow through and measure and track your key metrics, or you don't have a strategic department. You might have 3 people. You might have 7. You might even at 20, you don't have a large staff. Whatever it is, you maybe all volunteer, and as a result, there can be a sense of overwhelm that you might have gotten into this work because you want to help the kids in your community, or you want to help the environment, or you want to help some other cause of some sort, and you didn't get into this because you want to create a strategic plan and process. And so it's easy to let this sort of thing, other distractions, come to the table, and it can be kind of a dumpster fire of distractions. And so you might create a plan that ends up collecting just because you as a leader are getting pulled into so many different emergencies. And so to overcome that, there are 2 key tactics that we suggest. It's not real sexy or exciting or that earth-shaking, but if you have the discipline of doing these 2 things, this goes a real long way to making sure that the distractions don't throw you off track once you've got that plan created. The first one here is the concept of co-champions. And I didn't really think of, I didn't really care for this particular tactic at first, but my clients over the years taught me and showed me that this actually was an extremely effective idea. The concept is that, imagine fitness is a great analogy. I write about this in my book. Let's say you want to get in shape in some fashion, and you set up an exercise plan for yourself and so on. But or you set a New Year's resolution with New Year's coming up, and over time, after 1 month, 2 months, it starts to slip to the side. But imagine if you had a partner, and let's say you were trying to get up in the morning and exercise, and that partner shows up on your doorstep at 6 a.m. Well, you're going to get up because you don't want to disappoint that person. There's some mutual accountability. It's the same thing with strategic planning. If you can have 2 people, sometimes 3, but 2 people that we consider co-champions of your strategic plan. In Kelly's case, with his strategic plan, he's got a colleague named Claudia Newcorn. The 2 of them work together. They're co-champions. And because of Claudia's presence, it doesn't go into go and sit on the shelf and Maureen probably engages in that some too in their work. But Claudia and Kelly are the real core champions of that. And because they're a team, they make sure their strategic planning process at the SBDC works. And so if you can have one other person that you do this work with, and you have it calendared every month, you sit down for a half hour and you review your strategic plan on a quarterly basis, you get your team together, whatever that is. It's an incredibly useful tactic in making sure your strategic planning process really works, and you don't get distracted and overwhelmed by it. It just creates that accountability. The second element, and this is a really simple one, but if you're like most people, if it's not on your calendar, it's not going to happen. And so on the screen here is a sample, and I do really mean it's a sample calendar for how you can implement your strategic planning process over time. We found that a quarterly cadence, which is what you see here, every quarter you have a certain replicable cadence around how we sit down, we assess our progress, we have some check-ins monthly, and then it's bookended by an annual process where we actually sit down and do a retreat. We get together with the board and staff and we do a deeper dive. And then you wash, rinse, repeat this process annually. This isn't the only way of doing it, but this particular structure I've laid out here, but the concept goes back to the slide is you've got it documented. You have the dates on the calendar. You know when your quarterly reviews are. You know when your check-ins are. So, so much of what I've shared in these first two barriers and solutions are all about process. And I'm just saying that those organizations that succeed at doing this and get the best return on their investment of time and money on creating a plan are thinking of these two things from the beginning. Who am I going to champion this? What's our calendar? Are we thinking of this as an ongoing process? Those two things are these two barriers and solution combination are all about process, and it's why we're listing them 1 and 2. Now we'll start to talk about the plan a little bit. And true story, years ago, it's 2009, I was presented with a strategic plan for an organization. It was drop dead gorgeous. It looked good on a coffee table. It's 42 pages, spiral bound, beautiful kids, pictures of kids running through fields. It was a really nice little booklet. The problem was it was 42 pages, had 13 multi-page strategies. It was created over a period of 9 months, had over 90 people involved in it for an organization. I'm not kidding, 90 people for an organization that had a $25,000 annual budget and one very, very part-time staff person. It was kind of a crime. Like some municipal consultants volunteered their time to help do this, but they helped them create a plan for a city, not for a $25,000 project. And so oftentimes our board members and people we engage with are used to the leaders and so on our team are used to these much more massive plans for other settings. And it's entirely too complex. And you're sort of dead in the water from the beginning. And you don't have a chance to actually create a plan that's the right fit. So they don't get done. You blow it off because it's just way too complicated. So what we try to suggest is if you can create a plan that's super focused on 1 or 2 pages, again, it's a strategic plan. Here's a very brief summary of our vision of what our organization is going to look like. Here's an organization of a vision of the impact that we're going to have, our mission and vision. You can capture that, really simply at the top of 1 page. And then here are our goals and who's going to do them on the bottom of the page or the next page or whatever. And then you have a process in place to follow up. I'll give you a specific example of what that looks like here in a moment, but you can approach this really simply. Now, Aaron knows and other people know you can add a lot of layers to it and work plans and all of that, the project management. But at its core, if you and your team can think, okay, what are the core things that we're going to focus on? What's the right fit for our capacity? Because we have a lot on our plate. That too is a strategic plan and is arguably, it's much, much better than a much more complex, detailed one that it just won't see the light of day because there's too many things going on. Our particular structure that we recommend to people is a 2-part structure. Section 1 is called the compass, and section 1 is called the actions. Those are 2 sections of the plan. Section 1 gives you guidance, has your mission, your vision, maybe some key metrics, organizational values, et cetera. And section 2 are where your goals live. And I'm going to give you a visual right now, a sample plan, and you'll get a link to the sample plan. This is going to be in some software. So on the screen here, this is a very simple organization. It's a fictitious organization called Greenwords. You can see at the top, we've got 2 persons, Selena and Julia, that are the overall champions. There's a 3-year time horizon. This happens to be year 1 of what it is. This is in the software. Don't worry about that for the moment. But you see section 1, the compass. Here's a vision and mission statement. Section 2 are some what we call actions. And these are focus areas with people responsible. There's a vision for success for this particular focus area. And then there's some simple 1-year goals with people responsible, due dates, start dates, ways to measure and track progress and everything. So I'm just giving you a high level concept here. What I want you to take away from this is the structure that you can replicate. A compass, that going back to the slide here, I can go back to my presentation view. The compass is where you will have your mission and vision in there and potentially some other unchanging things like values and metrics and so on. And then in section 2, again, you'll get access to that plan I just shared with you so you can replicate that idea. some goals with people responsible and so on. So it's real simple, very doable. Anyone can do it. You do this sort of work, then it becomes so simple that you all can execute on it really well. So that's the basic structure I want to share with you. So this, and we've worked on this structure over the years, like this super simple, easy. You as a leader can communicate it. Here's our compass. Here's our actions. Here's our goals. Here's how we measure it. Here's who's responsible. So if you want to learn more about that, when you get the link to the plan, you can study that. In fact, there's another plan that's has a lot more metrics and things in it for an organization called the Ohio Food Bank Network. So you can take a look at those to replicate those two ideas. Going to move into barriers 4 and 5. Barrier 4 is a real simple idea that I see hang people up over and over and over again. You're going to get your team together and you're going to start writing goals. And we've all been learning about goals since we were kids, and everybody has different perspectives about really what that is. And as simple and tactical as this is, I highly encourage you to address this concept with your team to make sure you get on the same page about what you think a goal is. Almost all plans have some form of a goal in it. Maybe that you call them objectives or key performance indicators or whatever. We happen to use the terminology goal, but basically all the plans have something that we're going to do this, and we're calling it, a goal here. As you look at this list here, which of these are well written? And you can come back to the slide later on. The concept is that you may have heard of SMART goals or all sorts of other acronyms. The two core things that I would recommend that you look at when you're looking at a goal with your team is it's specific enough so that we all know what it's talking about and what it will look like when it's done. And so it's specific and measurable. Looking at this list, goal 1, this item 1, item 2, item 5, and item 6 are not goals the way we think of them. They're important ideas, but you don't really know strengthen our membership program. Like, how do we really know what that is? Revise our programs, important stuff. 3 and 4 are along the lines of what I would encourage you and your team members to work towards for the goal component of your strategic plan. It's specific. I know when this is going to be done. It's going to be done when we've hired a membership coordinator, ideally by September 15th. I know when this is going to be done. We've got membership revenue of $50K this year. So the specificity and measurability of these two are clear. The other 4 are good ideas, but they would need to be made to be more specific and measurable. At its most basic level, and I'll give you a table of some example goals here in a moment, so you can take a look at that. That gives you some ideas here. Just because of time, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but when we are working with clients on goals, there are 2 different types of goals that you can write: a results goal or a process goal. And I'm going to go to this table to indicate what I'm talking about. These 3 goals here are exactly the same topics as these 3 goals here. These 3 at the top are what we call results goals. In other words, if you accomplish this, you're going to hit this result. These, however, are written, and you can go back to those slides and kind of get more detail around what that's about. These are processes. And what we've found and what research backs up by a factor of 3 to 1 is that those organizations that establish and capture process-based goals, as highlighted here, are much, much more successful at growing, building their capacity, and hitting their results too. It's a little known and important nuance to the power of goal setting, that the goals are specific and measurable, which all of these are, but these are processes. And so I would encourage you, and you can review these slides and so on afterwards in more depth, but you and your team can and should think about process-based goals as a part of your plan that will lead you in the direction of the results that you want. We've seen over and over again how this really important goal setting concept can really help transform the power of your plan. And the last several slides here, and I'm going to wrap this up real quickly to hand this over to Kelly and Maureen to button it up, is that there are so many technology tools out there that can make this so much easier. Simple, practical tools that are better than a spreadsheet, better than a Word doc or a Google doc. And you should explore these. My guidance would be to explore these because in our case, at our company, we have both software as well as consulting and training. And this isn't a pitch for our software, it's a pitch for the idea. that you all can leverage different software tools where people like me and others have captured all these ways to make strategic planning simpler in a software tool. Our particular software is designed specifically for small organizations. Kelly uses it. We have organizations from Australia to Africa that are using the software. Simple, practical, easy to use, but it just has all sorts of benefits to making sure your strategic plan can work. So my challenge to you is, based on these 5 ideas that I've shared, take some action, perhaps put in chat one thing that you would like to do as a result of some of the ideas that I've been sharing. You'll get these slides, but these resources and links are available to you. You get a copy of the book. You get access to some strategic plans. If you do want to learn more about the software, one of my team members can do a demo for you. You get access to the slides. And if you're interested in as a consultant, I'd be happy to have a 30-minute consultation with you if you find value in that. And so all those links are available for you to learn more about this. But hopefully some of these core ideas resonated. I know, Kelly, we've talked about these ideas over the years, and hopefully really benefited your center and what you do there and your colleagues.
Absolutely. Turned me into a believer in the process. Yeah, and some great tools. And just jumping in real quick to the chat, there's a lot of resources in our chat, and some of those we'll focus on the ones toward the end of the chat. Which thank you, Eric, for the free book, Mission Met Proven Strategy, the PDF that's available, and that's right there that you can jump in and grab the sample strategic plan. Also, Eric's contact information at Mission Met, the free demo is right there, and a 30-minute free consultation with Eric Ryan. I might take you up on that.
Yes, that'd be a laugh.
I don't know how much strategic planning we would talk about because I already get to talk to you about that twice a year. So it might be something of another interest, but some other great stuff in the chat. Also, we do have one question, only one question, all that content, all that information. And the question is, why don't you recognize or help 508c18As? And if memory serves me correct, that's faith-based or maybe church organizations. And I think that there are a lot of resources, and I don't know if the question is directed toward the Small Business Development Center or the Kern Community Foundation. So I'll just take it from our standpoint, is that generally we provide very limited services to nonprofits based on our charter and our funding partners. And that is part of our strategic direction of working with small businesses, but trying to help everybody in the community. And that's what we do. So we would talk to anybody in the community about any idea that you might have. So that takes that, and no other questions that I can see. Eric, my friend, fantastic, fascinating information. It's good to see you pull back the curtain a little bit and go that particular direction. But thank you so much for joining us. Sorry, I was a little wordy. Sorry, I was a little wordy. It happens sometimes.
All good, all good. These are simple core ideas that people can leverage. It doesn't have to be a 2-hour presentation. Like these are, if you do those types of things that I referenced, you're starting to really create a foundation for strategic planning success. It doesn't have to be complex.
And we realize a ton of information in a short period of time. That's the way we roll here on Webinar Wednesday. So you will be getting a follow-up email. Maureen will do a follow-up email that will include today's recording. It'll include all the links, including the ebook and everything else that you might have not missed. Gives you an opportunity to go back through the presentation and really focus in on some of those key points. So Eric, again, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Thanks a lot.
And also big thanks to Aaron Falk for joining us from the Kern Community Foundation. For our producer, Maureen Busher-Dang, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll be back next week with SBA lending on, fixed assets and more. So we'll be in here with Keith Bryce and Frank Lagos. And so for everybody I've mentioned, we are out of here. See you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great week.